Hello, hello, hello.
And welcome to the Hildebrand Law Firm topic for today.
I'm Kirsten Hildebrand,
And I'm Matt Kaplan.
and today we are going to have a discussion about the strange things that we see coming through this office, coming from other attorneys. So I kind of feel a little bit bad, like maybe you were not supposed to be doing this.
I don't.
You don't feel bad at all?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean a little bit. You don't want to besmirch people in your profession, but at the same time, something like this, it's really important. This stuff is important to do. And so if someone's doing a bad job or if someone's doing something we don't like, yeah, they ought to be called out on it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a show called Botched on TV that's talking about all about bad plastic surgery. So I think we could talk about it too.
I think you're right. I think we owe it to our clients and the people that we are trying to reach through this,
Right.
To understand sort of the things that are clearly problematic and that they should look out for if they're trying to decide whether they're dealing with an attorney who might be doing things that are sloppy or even worse, things that are shady.
Yeah, and really interesting point too that you just made. Clients are won't know that any of these things are actually bad.
Right.
And so if they go
Right.
and meet with an estate planning attorney and they bring up one of these things, hopefully they've already seen the video and they go, "Oh, no, that's shady."
Yeah,
I don't like
okay. So I've got to start out with one of the shadiest things that I have seen.
Sure.
It was so fascinating because getting this kind of trust in from a client whose parents signed up for this trust and they went to one of those, state dinner for free sorts of things. And then they tell you all about this trust that you can get into that will avoid payment of income taxes. Okay, so her parents, who are elderly and both passed away, they went and saw this attorney who was working somewhere in the southeast Wisconsin area, and the trust was set up so that they were not the trustees, and they actually owned a share of a mega trust, and they owned a share of this mega trust, and their share was equivalent to the amount of assets that they put into that mega trust. And then here's where my knowledge base really falls off, because somehow, some way, this was a scheme to avoid paying income taxes. So anything inside of this was able to avoid income taxes, except for the IRS found out about it and they didn't think it was legal.
So
imagine that.
So the trust didn't avoid income taxes. It's just they just didn't pay income taxes.
I think that's the bottom line.
Okay.
And what was interesting is that the lawyers who had come up with this scheme and done all of the little state dinners and everything were in jail in Illinois because
Delightful.
Because this was like clearly illegal behavior. So it felt really yucky to read this trust and try to figure out what a criminal mind would attempt to do with a trust. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like so just disheartening to see that there are people out there who are willing to develop scams, because really ultimately this was a scam on the people who paid a tremendous amount of money actually to be part of this. And again, they were, probably in their 70s when they learned about it, and they got into this thing and it seemed like, oh, the best idea ever, and it ended up being a terrible idea. But then how do you get the assets out of a trust that is
you're not the trustee,
illegal, and you are not the trustee?
Yeah.
Right? So that therein was the problem that was presented to us as a law firm. How do we handle that? And that was a very interesting problem to solve.
So yeah, I think in that sense, I think the long story short of that is that they purposely didn't make the grantors the trustees.
That's right.
Of their own trust. And so, in my opinion, what's interesting about that is that could be sloppy and it could be shady or shifty, or what term are we using?
Shady.
Shady.
Yes.
It could be sloppy or shady.
Yes.
So I think in your situation, definitely shady.
Definitely shady. There's no question about it. Shady and illegal
Yeah.
because these people ended up. But the other thing you were talking about, besmirching the reputation of attorneys. What that did is it besmirched the reputation of trusts.
Yeah.
Because occasionally, rarely, but still occasionally, I will get someone in who says, I don't trust trusts. I don't like them. I don't I don't believe in them, and I think that they can be really used in an illegal way. Well, that's true, but that's the same thing as saying I don't like I don't know. I don't like going to the dentist because I found out there was one dentist who gave somebody a filling when there wasn't a cavity.
I don't like going to the dentist because Sweeney Todd, and he's
Yeah.
gonna kill everybody.
Right. Yeah.
So no, I totally get that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just besmirches the entire practice and estate planning attorneys in general. So yeah, definitely shifty.
Yes.
I don't like
Shifty
that.
shady.
I don't like
Yucky.
it.
Right.
And to that end, what's interesting is staying on this topic of not making the people who came to you as trustees of their own trust. I think there's a way that I've seen too where this is not necessarily shady, but it's more sloppy work. And so, for example, I've seen situations where they do not make the grantors, the people who your clients are, trustees of their own trust, not because they're trying to pull a fast one on them, but because they just don't know you can do that.
Oh, interesting.
So, I mean, a lot of times I get questions like, "Oh, I can be the trustee of my own trust, even if it's irrevocable." Well, yeah,
Yes.
of course.
Yes.
And so, some attorneys, if they're just not educated in that, they just don't know, and so they think, "Well, it's irrevocable, so I'll just make your kids trustees."
Interesting.
Yeah, I've seen that quite a few times. I have a story where this woman came in, and her husband set up an irrevocable and a revocable trust.
Mm-hmm.
And it was from 7 or 8 years ago. And so if I see an irrevocable trust from 8 years ago, immediately in my brain I start thinking, how is this bad? How is this screwed up? Because I haven't seen a good one from that long ago. And so I was like, how is this screwed up? What's wrong with this? And so I'm reading through it, and two things that are wrong. The main thing, her and her husband were not trustees of it. Her two kids were trustees of it. To make matters worse, I don't talk to my kids anymore.
Oh no! Oh,
I don't talk to my kids. She's like, "Can you revise my trust?" Like, yeah, but your kids are gonna have to sign off on it.
Yes, they will.
Well, I don't know where they are. Well, that's a problem.
You can't untrustee trustees.
Right.
Yes, especially if you're not a beneficiary, and she clearly wasn't the beneficiary of her own trust.
Yeah, and I looked through. There's no coup provision for the trustees.
Yes.
Coup provisions aren't a thing, but maybe we should think about it.
Right.
So,
Right.
so that was the big issue with that. The second big issue with that is that she had an irrevocable trust. Her home wasn't in it.
Oh my.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
And so sloppy lawyer work. Clearly,
Right.
a lawyer who maybe doesn't do estate planning all the time, or just doesn't really, there's a lot of lawyers that don't work with irrevocable trusts because they don't know how to do them. I'd much rather have a lawyer not work with them because they don't know how to do it than to give it a try.
Right.
And screw it up.
Right. No, you have to really, really understand what you're doing, because the devil is in the details, to coin a phrase that is overused, but it really is the fact of the matter is that an irrevocable trust, it really has to have particular language in it in order to support the trustee and the grantor being the same individual.
Right.
And also for it to in fact be irrevocable.
Right.
You can't just say irrevocable on the top. It has to have specific mechanisms in place in that document that will actually support its irrevocability.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's why it's so important to make sure that you're going to somebody who understands this. To be penny wise and pound foolish in this area of hiring lawyers to do this sort of work backfires. It just backfires. Another interesting tidbit coming off of your point about people naming other individuals as trustees of their irrevocable trust. I also ran into a situation. A client came and brought our trust, and it was brought to us a trust, and it was actually a revocable trust. It was written by a law firm. And that law firm had a special relationship with the bank across the street. And
Oh no.
and so they routinely said to their clients, well, we would recommend that you pick a trustee, and we suggest that you pick the bank across the street as the trustee. And so, not knowing any better, they said, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Well, then when they passed away and their children are now the beneficiaries and they're having to work with this bank, this child who was about 60 years old, when he came to me, said, I believe that there has been over $1 million in legal and trustee fees that have literally disappeared because the bank calls the attorney, they bill time. The attorney bills, it calls the bank, they both bill time, and on it goes. And there's no actual external motivation to shut the trust down and disperse to the beneficiaries, because this is an income stream for them. Now, that's not necessarily a bad idea if you literally do not have anybody in your family that you trust or that has the skills or wherewithal to be able to handle being a trustee. But that was absolutely not this family. This family had several professionals in this family that could have easily taken over this estate that was maybe $2 or $3 million. So, but it was getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed because of this relationship between the lawyer and the bank. So I'm going to call that one shady.
As shady as it gets.
I really do think so. And even though it seemed all on the up and up and seemed very much like it was kosher, at the same time, in practice, at the end, when when you have new people in charge, now it really looks like, wow, that was kind of a setup.
Yeah, and if they did that for these clients, they probably did it for every client.
Right.
Shady.
Right.
Shady as heck. I don't like it.
Yep, exactly. We really emphasize letting people make a very well-informed decision about who they want to have be the trustee.
Right.
And we give all of the options and we provide all of those options.
Right.
And I think that's what's so important, is that people understand what the implications are of picking various entities to be trustees. Well, thanks so much for joining us for at least part one of shady and sloppy attorneys and what it is that they do. And we will see you next time.